The phone rang once, twice. Kang Tae-jun smirked. After 7 years, his ex-wife was finally about to answer his call. He couldn't wait to see the look on her face. The screen lit up. It wasn't Alice. 3 identical little boys were staring into the camera. For a heartbeat. Nobody spoke. Then the boy in the middle gasped. His face exploded into a smile. "Daddy!" The other two shoved him aside. "Daddy! Mommy!" One of them shouted over his shoulder. "Daddy finally called!" Tae-jun's smile disappeared. Before he could speak, a woman's hand snatched the phone. The screen went black. Call ended. Silence. His phone was still in his hand. His heart wasn't. Tae-jun stood alone in the open elevator doors, phone still raised, the hallway lights humming around him. He didn't move for a long time. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe because what you're about to watch is going to break your heart before it puts it back together. He didn't go to his office. He went home, sat on the edge of his bed still in his coat, and played the video back. 3 faces. He paused it, zoomed in on the middle one, played it again, paused, zoomed on the one to the left. Again. The city lights moved across the window behind him, hour by hour, and he didn't notice. He wasn't looking for confirmation anymore. He already knew. He was looking for something else, some proof that this wasn't just biology, that this was actually his. He found it on the 9th replay. The middle child laughed at something off screen, head tilting back, and for half a second his smile went crooked on the left side. Exactly. Precisely the way Tae-jun's own smile had looked in every childhood photo his mother used to keep on the mantle before she died. Tae-jun's hand came up to his own mouth without him deciding to move it. He sat there in the dark for a long time, phone screen dimming in his hand, saying nothing, because there was nothing to say to an empty room that could hold the size of what he was feeling. By morning he had a plan, not a good one, just a start. He remembered the boy shouting "Mommy" before the call cut. A Busan accent, soft on the vowels, nothing like Seoul. He remembered a wall calendar behind them, half in frame, with the delivery company's logo stamped in the corner. He'd seen that logo before on trucks moving through the southern port routes. He didn't call Minho first. He drove to the port district himself, sat in his car outside 3 different depots for 2 straight days, watching delivery vans come and go until on the second afternoon he saw it. A small blue van, Alice Logistics stenciled on the side in white, pulling out of Depot 4. He followed it at a careful distance for 40 minutes out past the depots into a residential street lined with narrow apartment buildings and watched the driver, not Alice, carry a package up to a door on the 2nd floor. He sat outside that building until dark, hands on the wheel, not moving, rehearsing 100 different sentences and discarding every one of them. Only then did he call Minho. "I found her," Tae-jun said. "Boss, where are you? You've been unreachable for 2 days. Busan, I need you to run a company name for me. Alice Logistics. Quietly." There was a pause on the line, careful and searching. "You did this yourself?" "I did this myself." Minho's voice softened just slightly. "Then I'll get you what I can. But Tae-jun?" It was rare for him to use the first name instead of boss. "Whatever you find in there, you go in ready for it. Not ready for a fight." Tae-jun didn't answer. He was already looking up at the 2nd floor window where a light had just come on. Alice heard the knock at 7 a.m. and knew somehow, before she even opened the door, exactly who it was. She didn't open it. "Alice." His voice, muffled through the wood, hadn't changed in 7 years. "I know you're in there." She pressed her back against the door and closed her eyes. "Go home, Tae-jun." "I saw them." His voice cracked on the last word, just barely. Alice's hand was shaking on the doorknob. Behind her, small footsteps padded into the hallway. "Mommy, who's that?" She turned. 3 pairs of identical eyes stared up at her, still in pajamas, hair messy from sleep. "Go back to your room," she whispered. "Is that Daddy?" One of them asked, already moving toward the door. "No. Wait." Too late. The child had the latch undone before Alice could stop him, and the door swung open, and Tai-jun was standing there in yesterday's clothes, 2 days unshaven, staring down at a child who was staring right back up at him with his own face. "Daddy!" The boy threw his arms around Tai-jun's legs before anyone could react. Tai-jun didn't move. Couldn't. He looked over the child's head at Alice, and something in his expression wasn't anger anymore. It was something rawer, something closer to grief. 7 years, he said. You had 7 years to tell me. You didn't want to hear it, Alice shot back, voice shaking now too. You made that very clear when you signed those papers without a single question. Because I saw a photo, Alice. A photo of you with another man. There was no other man. Her voice cracked open loud enough that the children went quiet, staring between their parents like they'd never seen either of them like this. There was only ever you, and you didn't even give me a chance to explain before you threw me away. Silence. Even the children didn't speak. The eldest tugged on Tai-jun's sleeve. Daddy, are you going to stay for breakfast? Please, he added quietly, and something about the small, uncertain please undid both of them at once. Alice stepped back from the door, jaw tight, and didn't say yes, but didn't say no either. Tai-jun took that as permission and walked in before she could change her mind. The kitchen was small, warm, lived in. Tai-jun sat at a table built for 4, not 5, knees bumping the underside every time he shifted. 3 sets of eyes studied him with open, unguarded curiosity, introducing themselves without being asked. I'm Junseo, said the eldest, watching Tai-jun with a seriousness too old for his face. I'm the oldest, by 4 minutes. I'm Jiho, said the second, already reaching for more rice. Do you like soccer? The third one hung back near Alice's leg, wary. That's Woo Jin, Alice said softly, resting a hand on his head. He takes longer to warm up. Woo Jin studied Tai-jun a long moment, then asked very seriously, Are you going to leave again? The kitchen went still. I didn't know I was ever gone from you, Tai-jun said carefully, kneeling to his eye level. But I'm here now. Woo Jin considered this, then climbed into the chair beside him, apparently satisfied. You built all this, Tai-jun said quietly, once the boys were distracted again. Alone. I didn't have a choice. You could have come to me. I tried. Alice set a plate down harder than necessary. I called your office 11 times that first week. I was told you were unavailable. I went to the estate. Security wouldn't let my car pass the gate. I never got a single letter. I know that now. Her voice quieted, but the fire didn't leave it. I gave up writing to you after the first year. Not because I stopped hoping, because it hurt less to build something with my own hands than to keep begging a silence to answer me. But I never stopped waiting for you to find your way back. That's why I kept your photo. Why I told the boys who you were every birthday. Tai-jun's throat worked. 43 calls, he said quietly. I found the number myself, in an old phone bill still in your name at the district office. 43 calls to a line that was supposed to be mine. Alice looked up sharply. You found that? Yourself? I wasn't going to let someone else do this for me. Something shifted in her face. Surprise, maybe something gentler underneath it. Don't go anywhere. The next part of this story is where the truth finally starts cracking open, and you don't want to miss how it lands. Drop a comment telling me who you think is behind all of this. I promise it's not who you expect. Junseo slid off his chair and ran to a small wooden box on the shelf. He came back holding a photograph, worn soft at the edges, and held it up to Tai-jun like an offering. Mommy shows us this every year on our birthday, he said proudly. She says if we ever see this man, he's our daddy. Tai-jun took the photo with hands that weren't steady. Himself and Alice, years younger, laughing at something outside the frame. He turned it over. A date in Alice's handwriting. Months after the divorce was finalized. You kept this, he said. After everything, you kept this. Alice didn't answer. She didn't have to. Tae-Jun stared at the photo for a long moment, then looked up at the three boys, at Alice, at a life that had gone on in full color for 7 years without him ever knowing it existed. I have so much to make up for, he said quietly. I don't even know where to start. You already started, Alice said. You found us yourself. Neither of them said anything else. They didn't need to. Something in the room had shifted. Not resolved, not yet, but no longer frozen either. This is only the beginning. Something is still not adding up, and Tae-Jun is about to find out just how deep this goes. Stick around, because the next part changes everything you think you know. Tae-Jun stayed until the boys fell asleep that night, sprawled across the living room floor over half-finished puzzles, and only then did Alice walk him to the door. I need to understand what happened, he said. Not just that it happened. Who? Why? I've wondered that for 7 years, Alice said. If you find an answer, I want to hear it before anyone else does. He nodded and left and didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, Tae-Jun sat across from Min-ho in his office, a single folder between them. Not the thick file Min-ho usually assembled, but something thinner, more careful. I only pulled what you asked, Min-ho said. Nothing more. You wanted to do this yourself. I do. Tae-Jun opened the folder. Inside was a single printed record, a call log from his old private line, the one that had been disconnected the month after the divorce. This is everything routed through this number in the 6 months before the papers were signed? Everything I could recover. Most of it's gone, but there's a pattern in what's left. Tae-Jun scanned the log. Dozens of incoming calls from an unlisted Busan number, every single one under 60 seconds, every single one logged as forwarded, not answered, not missed. Forwarded. Someone had been redirecting them in real time. Forwarded where? That's where it gets complicated. Min-ho leaned forward. The forwarding order came from inside the household staff system, someone with administrative access to the private line, which narrows it down to a short list of people who had that kind of access 7 years ago. How short? Min-ho held up 3 fingers. 1. Your grandmother, obviously. She controlled every account in the house. Tae-Jun's jaw tightened, but he said nothing yet. 2. The Choi family. Min-ho watched Tae-Jun's face carefully as he said it. You remember the shipping dispute that year? Alice's early logistics contracts were undercutting a route the Chois considered theirs. If she'd stayed married into this family, backed by Kang resources, she could have run them out of the southern ports entirely. They had motive to make sure that marriage didn't survive. That's a stretch. Maybe. But it's on the list. And 3, Min-ho hesitated. Director Han. Tae-Jun looked up. My father's old director? He retired years before any of this. He didn't retire. He was pushed out quietly, right around the time you and Alice got married. He'd spent 15 years positioning himself as your father's second, assuming he'd advise you the same way once you took over. A wife with her own ambitions, her own influence over you, that's not what he'd planned for. He had motive to keep you unattached, and he still had contacts inside the household staff for at least a year after he left. Tae-Jun sat back, the weight of 3 names pressing down at once. 3 people, all with a reason. 3 people, Min-ho agreed, and only one of them did it. He went to the Choi first, because it felt safer than the alternative. The meeting was arranged through an old business contact, neutral ground, a private dining room in a restaurant that belonged to neither family. Chairman Choi Dae-sung was older than Tae-Jun remembered, silver at the temples, but his eyes were still sharp, still calculating. Kang Tae-Jun, he said, not rising. It's been a long time since your family requested a meeting with mine. This isn't a business meeting. No? Choi's eyebrow lifted slightly. Then what is it? 7 years ago, my marriage ended over a photograph and a series of intercepted calls. I have reason to believe someone with a business interest in seeing that marriage fail may have had a hand in it. Choi was quiet for a long moment, and then unexpectedly he laughed. Short, humorless. You think I broke up your marriage? I think your family had a reason to. We had a reason to want our contracts gone. That much is true. Your ex-wife's company undercut 2 of our southern routes that year, and I won't pretend I wasn't furious about it. Choi leaned forward. But intercepting a man's private calls, forging a photograph, altering hospital records, that's not a business tactic, Tae-jun. That's a family matter. And whatever else you think of me, I have never once involved myself in another family's private affairs. It's bad business. It invites the same in return. Tae-jun studied him, searching for the tell, the crack in the composure. He didn't find one. If it wasn't you, Tae-jun said slowly, you understand why I have to ask. I understand. Choi's expression softened, just slightly. For what it's worth. I heard about the children. 3 of them, I'm told. I have 4 grandchildren of my own. Whatever this cost you, I hope you get your answer. It simply isn't going to come from my house. Tae-jun left with nothing but a name crossed off a list, and the uncomfortable feeling that the list was getting shorter in the wrong direction. Director Han was harder to find. He'd moved to a small coastal town 2 hours outside Seoul, and when Tae-jun finally tracked him down, he was sitting alone on a porch, older and grayer than the sharp-suited man Tae-jun remembered from childhood board meetings. I wondered when someone would finally come asking, Han said, before Tae-jun had even introduced the reason for his visit. Then you know why I'm here. I can guess. Han gestured to the empty chair across from him. Sit. I'm an old man, and this is a long story if you want the honest version instead of the short one. Tae-jun sat. I won't pretend I was happy when you married her, Han said. I'd spent 15 years making myself useful to your father, positioning myself to guide you the same way once the responsibility passed to you. A wife with ambitions of her own, a woman who wouldn't simply defer to family strategy, that unsettled the plans I'd made for my own future in this house. So it was you. No. Han's voice was steady. I resented the marriage. I won't lie to you about that, but by the time it ended, I'd already been removed from the household for over a year. I had no access to your private lines, no authority over staff, nothing but an old man's bitterness, which I'll admit I nursed for longer than I should have. He looked out at the water for a moment. Whoever did what was done to you, they did it from inside the house, with authority I never had after I left. I promise you that much. Why should I believe you? Because I have nothing left to gain from lying to you, and an old man's only remaining currency is his honesty. Han met his eyes. I hope you find whoever did this, and I hope for your sake it's someone you're prepared to lose. Tae-jun left the coastal town with 2 suspects cleared and a growing sick certainty about the name still remaining on the list. That night, back at Alice's apartment, he sat at the same kitchen table, staring at the photograph Jun-zeo had given him, still turning it over in his hands out of habit. This time, running his thumb along the edge, he noticed something he'd missed before. A faint line, barely visible, where the photo paper seemed thinner, almost seamed. Alice, do you have a light? A strong one? She brought a desk lamp over without asking why. Tae-jun held the photo up against it, and in the bright backlight, the seam became unmistakable. 2 photographs, trimmed and layered together so precisely that only direct light revealed the cut. He carefully worked the edge apart with his thumbnail, and the top layer peeled back to reveal a second image beneath it. The original, uncropped, the one that had actually been taken that day. Alice laughing, a man's arm around her shoulder. And now, visible for the first time, a young woman standing just beside them, laughing too. Clearly part of the same group, clearly not invisible unless someone had deliberately cut her out of frame. That's Min-jun's fiancée, Alice breathed. That's from his engagement party. She was standing right there the entire time. Tae-jun's hands had gone cold. This wasn't a lucky photograph taken out of context. Someone cropped this, deliberately, with enough skill that I never once questioned it in 7 years. Who has access to do something like that? Cleanly enough that you'd never notice the edit? Tae-jun didn't answer right away. He was thinking of a woman who had spent 30 years managing every detail of his life so precisely he'd never once thought to question where the details came from. Some truths take longer to develop than others, and this one isn't finished yet. Stay with me, because everything is about to point in one direction, and it's not the one you'd expect. Minho was waiting when Tai-jun came back to the office the next morning, a single sheet of paper in his hand, his expression unusually careful. I found the technician, Minho said, the one who worked in the household's private archive 7 years ago. He confirmed a photo request went through him that year, a print job, rush order, no explanation given. He didn't ask questions. You don't ask questions in that house. Who requested it? He didn't keep records of who, but he remembered who signed off on his payment. Minho set the paper down. Same person who authorized the call forwarding order. Same person who had standing access to the hospital's administrative contact through a donation the family made to the hospital board that same year. A donation that came with certain courtesies. Tai-jun didn't need to hear the name. He'd known it, somewhere underneath, since the photo peeled apart in his hands the night before. He just needed someone else to say it first, so it would feel like fact instead of accusation. My grandmother, he said quietly. Minho nodded once and didn't say anything else. There was nothing else to say. The estate hadn't changed in 7 years. Same iron gates, same manicured gardens, same portrait of his grandfather glaring down from the entry hall. Tai-jun walked through it like a stranger in a house he used to call home. He found her in the tea room, pouring with the same steady hand she'd had his entire life. Tai-jun, she didn't look up. You look like you haven't slept in days. He set the peeled photograph on the table in front of her, the two layers separated side by side. Her hand paused over the teapot. Just for a second. Just long enough. I don't know what that is. Don't. His voice cracked through the room like a whip. 43 calls. Forwarded through a household system only you controlled. A hospital donation that bought you access to alter and emergency contact. A photograph cropped by a technician who confirmed you authorized the payment. I have 3 children I didn't know existed for 6 years, and you're going to sit there and pour tea like none of it happened? She set the teapot down slowly, finally meeting his eyes. No shame, no apology. Sit down, she said. I'm not sitting down. Then stand and listen. She folded her hands, composed as ever. Yes, all of it. The calls, the letters, the photograph, the hospital record. I did every piece of it myself, and I would do it again tomorrow if I believed it would save you the same way. Save me? His hands curled into fists. You stole 6 years of my children's lives. You let me believe the woman I loved betrayed me on purpose. Because a mafia boss doesn't need love, Tai-jun. She rose, walked to the window, looked out over the gardens like a general surveying a battlefield she'd already won. Love makes men weak. It makes them predictable. It gives enemies a place to aim a knife. That girl was kind and warm and completely unsuited to the life you were born into. She would have made you soft, and soft men don't survive in this world. They get buried in it along with everyone who depends on them. She didn't make me weak. She made me better. And you took that from me. His voice shook now, not with restraint, but with the effort of holding back something larger. You took 6 years of my children's lives, and you're standing there telling me it was a gift. It was survival. Something flickered behind her composure. Not guilt, but urgency, the look of a woman feeling her grip finally slip. Everything I did to keep this family standing. I was protecting your inheritance. I don't want it. The words landed heavier than either of them expected. Even she went still. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more in my life. He stepped closer, and for the first time in his life, his grandmother took a step back from him. Everything you built, everything you controlled, I'm done. I'm walking away from all of it. You'll lose everything, she said, real fear threading her voice for the first time. The businesses, the protection this family provides. You're standing with every partner, every rival who currently fears the name Kang. Walk away, and you walk away with nothing to shield those children from a world that eats weak men alive. Then let it eat me instead of them. He didn't flinch. The businesses need a hand that isn't mine and isn't yours either. Minho takes the seat, someone who never once used this family's name to hurt the people I loved. You'd hand this family to an outsider before you'd take it yourself. I'd hand it to someone who deserves it. He turned toward the door. That's more than either of us can say. If you walk out that door, do not expect this family to catch you when you fall. Tae-jun stopped in the doorway, looked back at her one last time. I'm not falling, he said. I'm finally standing up. He walked out, and this time he didn't look back. She wasn't bluffing. Comment below if you saw this coming, because what happens next isn't as simple as walking away clean. 2 days later, Tae-jun sat across from a supplier who'd worked with his family for 15 years, watching the man avoid his eyes over an untouched cup of tea. I'm sorry, Tae-jun, the man said. The terms have changed, effective immediately. Your grandmother's office called this morning. The contract renews with the family, not with you specifically. By the end of the week, 2 more contracts had followed the same path. His head of security resigned without explanation. A warehouse lease he'd held for 6 years came back marked under review. Minho found him that night, staring at a spreadsheet of numbers that kept getting worse. She's dismantling you piece by piece, Minho said quietly. Slowly enough that it looks like bad luck instead of a war. I know what she's doing. Boss, if you don't go back and smooth this over, I'm not going back. Not for this. Not for any of it. Tae-jun closed the laptop. I told her the businesses go to you, not to her, not back to me. You've run half this operation for years without the title. I'm making it official, if you'll take it. Minho went very still. You're serious. Dead serious. Clean books, clean partners, no more family politics looking over your shoulder. Build it the way you'd build it if nobody was watching your neck. And you? I'm starting over. Smaller. Something that doesn't answer to her and doesn't need to. For the first time in days, something like calm settled over Tae-jun's face. I've spent 7 years building something that made me powerful and miserable. I'd rather spend the next 7 building something small enough to actually sleep at night. Minho almost smiled. You've changed. I had 3 good reasons to. Alice heard about the fallout before Tae-jun told her. A mutual contact in Busan mentioned half the Kang family's usual partners had gone quiet. She sat with the boys that evening, only half listening to their chatter, her mind circling the same worry over and over. He had walked away from everything. For them. For her. And some old, guarded part of her didn't know what to do with that. The knock came at 8, softer than the one from days before. She opened the door this time. Tae-jun stood there without his usual composure, tie gone, sleeves rolled, looking more tired and more unguarded than she'd ever seen him. I heard, she said quietly. I don't regret it. You gave up everything. I gave up a name, he said. I didn't give up anything that actually mattered. He looked past her, toward the sound of the boys' voices, and something in his face softened completely. I want to build something new, slower, smaller, something I could actually let them be part of one day. That's not a small thing to ask, Alice said, arms crossed, guard still up but not as high as it had been. Trust doesn't rebuild in a week. You broke it in 4 days once. I need to know this isn't going to happen again the first time something gets difficult. I know, I'm not asking you to trust me today. I'm asking for the chance to earn it, however long that takes. Dinner, she said finally. You can stay for dinner. That's all I'm offering. Tonight. He came back the next week, and the week after that. Slowly, dinners became a standing habit. Tae-jun learning which boy needed his rice separated from his vegetables, which one couldn't sleep without a specific stuffed rabbit, which one still eyed him warily every time he reached for his coat, bracing for the door to close again. It was Woo-jin, 3 weeks in, who finally stopped flinching. Tae-jun was helping him with a puzzle on the living room floor when the boy said, without looking up, You come back every time now. Every time, Tae-jun agreed. Even when it's hard? Especially then. Woo-jin leaned his small weight against Tae-jun's arm, and neither of them said anything else about it, because nothing else needed saying. Alice watched from the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, and for the first time let herself believe this might actually hold. Months later, the school hallway was decorated with paper hearts for the Father's Day event, and Alice stood near the back doors watching her sons fidget with their collars, checking the entrance every few seconds. "He said he'd come," Junseo whispered, more to himself than anyone. "Daddy doesn't break promises anymore," he added with the stubborn faith only a 6-year-old could manage. He said. The doors opened. Taijun walked in, hair slightly out of place like he'd run the last 2 blocks, a bakery bag still in one hand. His eyes found the 3 boys instantly, then Alice, standing just behind them. "Daddy!" All 3 ran at once, nearly knocking him over. He dropped to his knees right there in the middle of the hallway, gathering all 3 into his arms, eyes closed, breathing them in like a man who still couldn't quite believe this was real. Wu Jin held on tighter than his brothers, face buried in Taijun's collar, quiet in the way that meant more than any of his brothers' noise. "Daddy?" Wu Jin finally said, voice small against his shoulder. "Yes?" "You came back." "I told you I would." The boy pulled back just enough to look at him, checking the way he always did, and this time he smiled instead of studying. Taijun smiled back, and for a moment neither of them said anything else at all. Behind them, Alice stood by the door, arms crossed loosely, a small smile she wasn't quite letting all the way out. Taejun looked up and held her gaze a beat longer than he needed to. She didn't look away. If this story moved you, don't scroll past without hitting subscribe. There's another one just like it waiting for you, and you won't want to miss where it goes. Drop a comment and tell me which moment hit you hardest, and hit like if you're glad Taijun finally found his way back to his family.